Welcome to this deep dive, and today we're really getting into it with James Joyce. You've given me so much to work with here, excerpts, notes, it looks like even pieces of a presentation. We're going to uncover it all his life, his work, really trying to understand why he still matters so much today.
It's amazing how much of Joyce's later work you can see echoed in his upbringing, if you look closely.
Oh, absolutely. And this presentation jumps right in, talking about his early life in Dublin. Born in 1882, eldest of 10 kids, 10, in a Catholic family. Talk about a lot of pressure.
It really makes you think about the environment he grew up in. 10 children, and with that many mouths to feed, it's no surprise that the presentation mentions money was tight. They moved around a lot, never quite able to settle.
It's that classic story, right? You can see how that sense of displacement, of searching, would find its way into his writing later on. You could just picture him soaking it all in. And then there's this sharp turn. The presentation mentions Clongowes Wood College, a Jesuit boarding school. Talk about a world away from struggling to make ends meet.
It really highlights the contrast that shaped him. Even if he later became more critical of organized religion, think about it. That Jesuit education, it was steeped in language, rhetoric, analysis, tools he'd later use to, well, almost dismantle language itself in his writing.
It's like the seeds of his own literary rebellion were sown right there in the classroom.
Yeah.
And it didn't stop at the place. Belvedere College, then University College, Dublin. The presentation really emphasizes his education. It's clear this was someone drawn to the power of language.
And you see that passion early on. He's writing poetry, prose, even as a teenager. And get this, he gets his first piece published at 18. At 2, Healy.
18. I was barely able to form a coherent sentence back then, let alone get published. But it's fascinating to see these themes he becomes known for starting to emerge. Even in those early works, you see that engagement with Irish nationalism, with Catholicism, bubbling to the surface.
It's all there, but it finds a different kind of expression, a rawness, maybe, in Dubliners. His first collection of short stories, published in 1914. Even now, they feel so modern, so immediate. Have you had a chance to read any of them?
Oh, are you kidding? The Dead, Araby, those are some of my favorites. They capture this essence of Dublin life, the sights, the sounds, but always with this, I don't know, this underlying current, this sense of being stuck, of people trapped by their own routines.
That's it, that paralysis, that inability to break free. And yet within that, you have those flashes of insight, of awareness, those epiphanies that Joyce became known for. It's like a life of quiet desperation, punctuated by these moments of sudden, almost painful clarity.
It's such a powerful concept, isn't it? That tension between feeling trapped and that yearning for something more, something to shake things up. And it makes you think about what those moments of clarity do to us. Do they inspire change or just make us more aware of how stuck we are? It's something you see again in his first novel, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, published in 1916, just a couple of years after Dubliners. It feels like we're going deeper into that idea of artistic self-discovery.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you mention that sense of yearning. Because with Portrait, we have Stephen Dedalus, the protagonist, and it's hard not to see echoes of Joyce himself in him. That process of intellectual and artistic awakening, that growing disillusionment, the need to break free, it's all there wrapped up in this semi-autobiographical story.
And even beyond the personal, I think it taps into something universal, don't you? That feeling of being hemmed in by expectations, by society, and the struggle to define yourself on your own terms. But you know what else strikes me about Portrait? It feels like Joyce is really starting to play with language here, pushing against the boundaries of what traditional prose can do. It's like a hint of what's to come in his next big work.
You're talking about Ulysses, of course. You can't really talk about experimental literature without talking about Ulysses, published in 1922. And this presentation really hits the nail on the head, calling it a groundbreaking work, a landmark modernist novel. What is it about Ulysses that you think makes it so groundbreaking?
Well, for me, it's the way Joyce takes stream of consciousness and just dives right in. It's not just the literary device, it's the whole structure of the novel, right? We're talking one day in Dublin, seen through the minds of these characters, Leopold Bloom, Molly Bloom. And it's messy, it's fragmented, it's like you're hearing their every thought.
Exactly. It's not about a neat chronological narrative. It's about recreating the experience of consciousness itself in all its messy glory. It's like overhearing someone's internal monologue, all the jumps, the tangents, the sudden memories. It's life as we actually experience it.
And somehow, within that chaos, there's this incredible intricacy. This presentation points out all those parallels to Homer's Odyssey, woven throughout the novel, the allusions, the echoes. It's like he's creating this multi-layered tapestry with all these different threads connecting and diverging. It's mind-boggling.
And let's not forget, it was mind-boggling for readers back then, too. This wasn't just a novel, it was a challenge. The presentation mentions the censorship Ulysses faced when it was first published. It was considered obscene, confusing too much for some readers to handle. Can you imagine picking up a book like that for the first time? No roadmap, no clear path, just this explosion of language and ideas.
It makes you grateful that readers were willing to take that leap, to stick with it. Because now, Ulysses is considered one of the most important novels of the 20th century. Talk about a vindication. And yet, as groundbreaking as Ulysses was, Joyce wasn't done. Enter Finnegans Wake, published in 1939. This presentation describes it as, and I quote, highly experimental and challenging, which feels like we're underselling it a bit.
To call it ambitious is an understatement, really. If Ulysses was pushing the boundaries, Finnegans Wake took those boundaries, crumpled them up, and tossed them out the window. It's like he decided to invent a new language altogether. Puns, neologisms, words you won't find in any dictionary.
I've tried to read it. I really have. And it's like trying to assemble a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing and no picture to guide you. But you know what? Even if it's not an easy read, it stands as this testament to Joyce's pure audacity. It's like he's asking, how far can language go? Can it capture the way we dream, the way we think at our most primal level?
And, by asking those questions, by going to those extremes, he opened up a whole new world of possibilities, not just for writers, but for readers, too.
It's true. It's like he gave us permission to break all the rules, to see language as this vast, uncharted territory ripe for exploration. But even with all that experimentation, all those words swirling around, it's important to remember that there's a real person behind those words. The presentation makes a point of mentioning that Joyce was, believe it or not, a family man. Married to Nora Barnacle. What a name.
It does have a certain ring to it, doesn't it? And they had 2 children together. It's a good reminder that these literary giants, these innovators, they have lives outside the page, too, with all the joys and challenges that come with them.
Speaking of challenges, their life wasn't exactly a walk in the park. The presentation mentions that they lived all over Europe, practically in self-imposed exile from Ireland. And it sounds like money was a constant worry.
It makes you think about the sacrifices artists often make, doesn't it? That constant struggle to balance creative passion with the practicalities of life. And even with all of that, Joyce never gave up. Imagine if he had. The world would be missing some incredible works of literature.
It's a testament to his dedication, that's for sure. But it wasn't just writing that captured his imagination. The presentation also mentions his love of music. He even trained as a singer at one point. Do you think that musicality found its way into his writing?
Oh, absolutely. There's a rhythm to his prose, a musicality to the way he structures sentences. Wouldn't you say? It's like he's not just choosing words, he's composing with them. Think about that famous line from Ulysses. History is a nightmare from which I am trying to awake. It's lyrical, it's haunting, it just stays with you.
It's true. His words have a way of getting under your skin. Maybe it's that ability to tap into something universal, that longing for meaning, that desire to break free from the weight of the past. And it's a shame that his own journey was cut short. The presentation says he and his family fled Paris in 1940 as the war was engulfing Europe. They ended up in Switzerland, where he died in 1941 following surgery. A life cut tragically short, but what an impact he made.
It's hard to imagine what else he might have created, what other boundaries he might have broken. But even in those few short years, he managed to revolutionize literature. Think about it. Stream of consciousness, fragmentation, the way he challenged the very idea of a linear narrative. Those techniques are everywhere now. They've become part of the DNA of storytelling.
It's like he gave writers this whole new toolkit, and they've been building on his foundation ever since. And it wasn't just the techniques, it was the way he explored the human experience. The paralysis, the epiphanies, the search for meaning in a world that often feels meaningless, those are themes that will always resonate, no matter how much time passes.
He reminds us that even in the ordinary, the everyday, there's this incredible depth of experience waiting to be uncovered. It's about paying attention, about looking closer, about finding the extraordinary in the seemingly mundane.
And that's a powerful lesson to carry with us, isn't it? As we wrap up this deep dive into the world of James Joyce, it feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the point. Maybe he wouldn't want us to just passively consume his work, but to engage with it, to wrestle with it, to let it spark our own creative fires.
He certainly gave us plenty to think about, that's for sure. And I have a feeling we'll be talking about James Joyce for a long, long time.
To James Joyce, then a true original. And to you, dear listener, happy reading.